And our CEO, Mr. Roshan, and then we have Shami, and then starting from our HODs all the way to heads of schools and all staff who are joining us. So thank you so much for joining us today. With that, I would like to invite our chairman, Mr. Bandhu Legodage, to spare a few minutes in welcoming our students and giving your thoughts in. Over to you.
Thank you. Good evening. On behalf of the APIT management, CEO Mr. Roshan Godage, staff and student of APIT, I am very warmly welcome Her Excellency Sashikala Premawardane as our chief guest today. Indeed, it is a great honor that you accept our invitation in spite of your busy schedule, madam. Thank you very much once again. Today, our students who join us for postgraduate studies, apart from your academic qualifications, you accept to build good networking, which is more important for your corporate career and for your life. We as APIT believe build leaders. We inspire love for learning. We intend to revolutionize the education landscape. Welcome all our students. Thank you for your excellency. Once again, my appreciation goes to Dr. Rohanta Atukorala Kaushali, along with all your happy team for the great work done. Wish you all a very successful session. Thank you very much for patience hearing. I wish you all the very best for the successful session on the way. Thank you very much once again.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Chairman. So nice to have you on board today despite your busy schedule. So with that blessings, Dr. Rohantha, I would like to hand it over to you. So Dr. Rohantha Atukorala is our head of the postgraduate school. Students, you will be meeting him along with our award coordinators. That is Professor Priyantha Kumaravadu for the master's program, that is in MSc program, and the award coordinator, Dr. Chatura Vanasurya for the LLM program, and Dr. Rajita for the MBA program. So all of them are on board. We will be having a separate session with them as well. Along with the panel, I would cordially invite Dr. Rohantha for the next session.
Thank you very much, Kaushali, and good evening to every one of you. My sincere thanks to Her Excellency for joining from Singapore, and it's actually an honor to do this task. Thank you very much, Chairman, for the opportunity that you have given. And I mean, it's very nice to have such strong leadership coming to the academic arena of the country. And it's actually great to have a CEO like Roshan Egodage, who is hands-on into the management and driving a new culture of education in the country. And it's really fantastic to be part of this team, to have a top-down approach, but having so much of a good footprint in the ground, so that we do something which is right for the country. I think for the new students who have joined us for the master's program, my sincere thank you for selecting the education center, and also entrusting your next 2 years of molding you to what is required for the country. And you have taken a very decisive move. We know that things are very rough right now, not only globally, but also in Sri Lanka, because we are now faced with the second wave. And you can see lockdowns across the country. But yet you have braved it, and you have decided that you're going to invest on yourself in the next 2 years, so that you will understand how you can be competitive when you move out of your master's education. My key message to every one of you is that the reason why all of us are very committed to guiding you all is because we suddenly realized that the pre-pandemic era, the practices that many of us use in our own companies is going to be very, very different to the post-pandemic. You know, your total consumer has changed. The consumer is becoming more basic in what they are doing. They are going back to the general ways, the traditional ways of doing things. They want to use traditional soaps in the way they wash themselves. They want to use traditional foods, so that is going to help them to be much more immune to this COVID-19 virus. So whilst there is the new normal, which has been practiced with regard to social distancing and wearing a mask, washing your hands, checking your temperature, from the other side, you're trying to see whether you can be strong enough to, to make sure that your immune system is strong, and thereby you can fight the pandemic. So people are going back to the basics. No more are people wanting to lead a very cosmetic life. uh, People have moved away from trying to move with society in terms of a lifestyle, but they're going back to that uh, smallest unit happens to be in society, which is a family, and trying to see how you can drive your set of values, which are much more grounded to what is required right now for us to face this huge challenge that we are up against. So we, starting from Chairman Bandula to the CEO Roshan to the whole team, the coordinators like Rajita, Dr. Rajita for the MBA, and we have Professor Priyanta who drives MSc, and then we have Dr. Chatura who is driving the LLM. I mean, you all of us are trying our very best to give you with a new set of skill sets, a new set of thinking that's going to make you competitive when we get out of this pandemic. So that's the kind of challenge that we have set across. We are not people who are just into academics, but we are practicing industry. The lecturers that have been brought are people who have hands-on experience to what they do, because our CEO Roshan very clearly says that when you look at master's programs must be about debate. It must be about challenging people and asking yourself how you can network with people and become competitive in the marketplace. So that's the kind of thinking we bring to the table, and we sincerely thank every one of you to actually join in this whole task, so that we can make Sri Lanka 100 billion GDP economy with our current performance of at about 85 billion. So that's where we come from, and thank you very much for the trust that you have placed. So let me now introduce to you um, a very eminent uh, Sri Lankan, who happens to be a person whom I've been knowing for the last maybe 10 to 15 years, I reckon. I mean, we have served on many forums like uh, selecting the advertising agency of the for the Sri Lanka Tourist Board. We have been serving from I think 2008 onwards in different capacities, and I'm actually honored to have Her Excellency Sashikala Premawardane, who is the High Commissioner of Sri Lanka. Uh, as per protocol, I would like to introduce Her Excellency. She joined the Foreign Service in 1998, served as a Director General for Policy Planning and Research in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and then went on to become the Director General of the Ocean Affairs, Environment, Climate Change, and prior to that, she also was handpicked by the current president to serve on the Ministry of Defense, a position that was very, very carved out on how relationships with the global work was going to interrelate. And then she went on to become the director for the United Nations. She has served multilateral affairs, human rights and conferences, director technical cooperation, and deputy director economic affairs overseas. Her Excellency has also served in many missions overseas, like being the High Commission in Canberra. She was acting High Commissioner for Sri Lanka in Australia. She has also served in the Sri Lankan Embassy in Tokyo as the first secretary, and she holds a Bachelor of Arts and Economics from the University of Pune, India, and Masters in Conflict and Peace Studies from the University of Colombo. She is a past pupil of Bishop's College, Colombo, and something which is very unique about Our chief guest today happens to be that she's a very, very outspoken lady, and she's not shy, she's not scared to tell and talk the truth, which is why I specifically um, told the management that we should select Her Excellency to come on board. Just to give you a view of the way she looks at life, she was actually headhunted to lead the UK High Commission, and but then she said, "No, I'm going to serve Asian country," and that's how she has gone in as a High Commissioner to Singapore. So over to you, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ohanta, and thank you to the chairman of APIT for the invitation extended to me to speak to the new entrance to the master's programs for 2020 conducted by APIT. It's a great honor to be here. Thank you very much for the kind words of introduction. I think, Dr. Ohanta, perhaps we're going to rush through the first half of the presentation on a little bit about Singapore. Am I right? Are you going to go through that?
I will do that, Your Excellency. So just to set the stage for Her Excellency to take us through on what she did during her last 1 year, I'll just give a quick view of this whole area of Singapore. So Singapore happens to be a population of about 5.6 million people, and their GDP is around 323 billion. I mean, our GDP is at about 85 billion, so that economy is almost like three times or four times of Sri Lanka. So you can just imagine how important this particular country is in our template with Sri Lanka. We have the economic growth is at about 3.6%, but Her Excellency was saying that this year it will be about minus 0.6%. So I mean, it's a country that is amazing. The way that they have landscaped the whole of Singapore, and I think one of those key areas that they do is the right now the most important area happens to be the Changi Airport. Research shows apparently how Singaporeans look at business. They don't look at a top-down approach, but they're totally research-driven. So what they have done was that they have found out that almost 22 million people who come to Singapore, they don't actually come out to the airport. They are in the Changi Airport per se. So now what they did was they have built a park which is like a kilometer away from the Changi Airport, so that once tourists come in, they enjoy themselves by going to the park, and then they come back and take their flight outwards. So they are trying to see how they can increase their income by the people who are just spending the day in the Changi Airport. So that's how much they are so research driven. Their port is one of the best ports in Southeast Asia, which actually has almost 130,000 vessels that call on it annually, and they happens to be the Sri Lanka happens to have come in with Hambantota, and that is the competition that it's giving the Maritime Port Authority of Singapore. The entertainment industry is very strong. Their malls are something that is unique to the world. And then, of course, now they have created adventure into the country. So that's what makes it so unique. So this is all about the beauty about Singapore and why Singapore is so unique. I'm not sure whether Your Excellency selected this country to be the High Commissioner for the beauty it holds, or whether it's for the trade and development that it can give. So over to you, Your Excellency.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ohanta, for that overview. Um, what I intend to do, perhaps, is to talk a little bit about the topic that I've been given, which is building trade and trade between countries during the pandemic times. But before I go into building trade between countries, I thought I should speak a little bit about the role of a diplomatic mission, particularly the High Commission in Singapore. So the main purpose of a diplomatic mission overseas is to promote and strengthen bilateral relations between two countries, and also to look after the interests of Sri Lankans who living in that country and providing them with consular assistance. And the other most important thing that a diplomatic mission does is to promote trade, business, investment, and tourism between the two countries. Apart from that, we also promote cultural links, trade, technical cooperation between the two countries, vocational training. So there's a spectrum of cooperation activities that a diplomatic mission is entrusted to take care of. So the most important, however, is the political and economic relations between the two countries and how to shape the economic and political relations between the two countries. That's the main task of a diplomatic mission. So between there is an intrinsic link between political and economic diplomacy. Now, if you have observed of late the trade wars, if you're watching what's happening across the world, you will realize that in some instances, politics does determine business. Because you would think that it is business when it makes business sense, that surely there would be business between countries. But there are instances where politics does determine what takes place in the business arena as well. So there is a very intrinsic link between political diplomacy and economic diplomacy. Sri Lanka and Singapore have established diplomatic relations over 5 decades ago. We celebrate 50 years of diplomatic relations this year. But the ties between the countries goes back to many, many centuries. Particularly the cultural and community links are quite strong. We have about 12,000 people here, and many, particularly from the Ceylonese Tamil community, they have contributed significantly to the development of independent Singapore. For example, one of Singapore's first foreign minister, S. Rajaratnam, is of Ceylonese Tamil descent. So there's a big link between the two countries, between the two cultures, between the two communities, and this sets the stage for the political relations between the two countries, and also for us to take advantage of the economic potential that Singapore possesses, which Dr. Rohantha Tukorala was just talking about. So I took over responsibilities about 1 year ago, well, a little bit more than 1 year ago, in June 2019. Those pictures are of my credential ceremony, presenting credentials to Her Excellency, Madam Halima Yaqub, the President of Singapore. The role of the High Commissioner per se is to act as the person who leads the diplomatic mission and gives direction to the diplomatic mission. So the pandemic actually really came around at a time when we had been planning many events. As soon as I took over, what I realized was we can't do everything at the same time. So we decided to focus on 4 main areas. Because I think it's important to be specific in what you want to do, because you can't achieve, if you start trying to do everything, it's a little bit difficult to achieve the results that you want to achieve. So we decided to focus on 4 areas. One is IT and IT-enabled services, food and spices, gems and jewelry, and tourism. So we thought the first 6 months of the year, June 2019 to the end of that year, that we would focus on these areas. And so setting the stage for that, what we did was, particularly in the tourism area, ITB Asia was taking place in Singapore. We invited several Sri Lankan companies to exhibit, which they did. In addition, we also had a tourism promotion event at the Shangri-La. And we invited many of the many of the tourism companies to come and look at Sri Lanka's tourism product, because we were dealing at this time in the post-Easter Sunday period. So tourism was slow, people were cautious. There was a travel advisory that was imposed by Singapore on Sri Lanka. So there was very little movement from Singapore to Sri Lanka at the time. So we thought it was important to keep in the minds of the Singaporeans that this was Sri Lanka was a very attractive destination. It's 4 hours away, 31 flights a week, connecting us. So trying to boost tourism, the steps that the High was to keep the tourism product in the minds of Singaporeans. So we did that through some of the events that I spoke about, apart from which we also reached out to travel magazines. And we had Sri Lanka featured over the course of those months in at least 3 travel magazines on 3 occasions, talking about specifically different aspects of Sri Lanka's tourism product. In addition to which, we on the gems and jewelry sector, what we did was we invited certain companies to participate in the Singapore International Jewelry Expo. And coming into 2020, we were making plans to be a partner country in the expo for 2020 to celebrate 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations, and also to augment the ties between the 2 countries in this particular sector. Then the IT and IT-enabled services, what we did was, under the Economic Diplomacy Initiative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we obtained funding to support 12 companies to participate in one of the largest financial technology events that was hosted by Singapore, that was FinTech. And this was the first time that Sri Lankan companies participated in FinTech. It was a very, very good exposure for them. And also the feedback that we got from the companies that participated was that they made the networking opportunity that was present at the event was really, really useful for them. In addition, we also had the Singapore Sri Lanka Business Council of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce undertake a visit to Singapore during this time. So there were different trade sectors represented in that, and we had an event to showcase investment potential. In addition to which, many of the companies were also given an opportunity to have B2B meetings. So these are some of the events that we had to set the stage for really to augment economic cooperation between the 2 countries. For the potential, for example, in the IT and IT-enabled services, if I give you an example, in December 2019, one of the fashion platforms in Singapore called Zilingo, they acquired a Sri Lankan startup called Insinga. The software that Insinga made for this platform was deployed in 6,000 factories across 75,000 businesses. So the company is also helping this particular startup to venture out into Bangladesh and to Vietnam to basically showcase their product in those countries as well. So this is the potential that really exists in the IT and IT-enabled services area in Singapore. So while we had made all these plans, we certainly had not made plans for the pandemic. So it took us all by surprise. And when dealing with the unknown, the High Commission also had to think about how we had to adapt to the new normal. There was a case of a coronavirus positive person found in the building in which the High Commission was located. So we had to close the mission for a period. And we also started working from home because Singapore also had restrictions on the amount of people that could be at a workplace. So as I said, one of the primary responsibilities of a mission is also to look after the citizens of Sri Lanka in Singapore. So our primary responsibility during the pandemic was to protect the Sri Lankan citizens overseas, the short-term visitors, the travelers, the students, and the migrant workers. So what we wanted to do particularly was to ensure that during the circuit breaker period in Singapore, that the movement of particularly the students and the short-term travelers and also the migrant workers would be limited. Even though there was a circuit breaker, supermarkets were open in Singapore. So people, particularly students, tended to go out and eat. So we tied up with many Singapore charities. We did cooked food runs, basically, lunch and dinner on a daily basis for approximately 2 months. We got all these as donations. And my staff, I'm really proud of them because they really delivered tremendously during this time. Many of them working till 11 o'clock in the night, delivering food to students, to short-term travelers who were stranded here. Apart from that, we also realized that some of the students couldn't pay their rents. Some of the students couldn't get money from home because their part-time work had dried up. We had to also reach out to the community, and there were well-wishers and community members who came forward to support these students during this critical period. When it came to the repatriation process, we negotiated with Sri Lankan Airlines. We spoke to them. They were operating, despite the pandemic, they were operating cargo flights to Singapore. So I had a chat with the regional manager and asked him whether it was possible for us to seek to send people back. Once we got the approval from the foreign ministry, we were able to repatriate on, we've done so far 5 repatriation flights. Close to 1,080 Sri Lankans who were stranded in Singapore were sent back on those 5 repatriation flights. Apart from those repatriation flights, we also facilitated the transit of Sri Lankans from Brunei, Cambodia, New Zealand, PNG, and the Philippines during this period. The support that we raised as the mission was close to about worth about Singapore dollars 150,000, and this included dry rations, accommodation, airline tickets, rents for students, donations to Sri Lanka of medical supplies, together with Singapore charities. Apart from that, one of the most significant support came from Temasek Foundation, which is a Singapore government-backed entity. And they provided to us much needed test kits, 10,000 test kits, PPE, face masks, ventilators, and all these things we had to find ways of getting back to Sri Lanka with cargo flights at the initial stages, with very few cargo flights operating, and looking for routes, coordinating with many of the airlines and getting all these things back in time so that they can support the COVID-19 response that the government had undertaken. So I think the previous pictures, the next pictures, Dr. Atukoral, if you could just, yeah. So these are some of the pictures of people going home, and some of the pictures of the donations that were given to Sri Lanka. This is a picture of the one at the left-hand bottom is Temasek Foundation CEO Benedict Chong handing over the test kits to me. Next slide, please. Those are some of the pictures of the repatriation flights that were undertaken. Very difficult process, very trying process, but nevertheless, I'm very happy because the team, the High Commission team, really got together with Sri Lankan Airlines, with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Presidential Secretariat, and it was a joint effort by whole of government, and that's why we were able to get people home. So the next thing that during the pandemic period, so we were overtaken by the whole process of repatriation. But we also realized that we need to keep business moving. We need to keep trade moving. Tourism, of course, is probably the toughest that we had to keep moving, but we wanted to do things to ensure that trade between the two countries, investment between the two countries, and hopefully in the latter stages, tourism between the two countries could recommence. So before I go into what we did, I would just like to give a little bit of an assessment of the trade statistics. The trade turnover is not in our favor. It has been in the favor of Singapore for many years. The value of trade is somewhere between, it has fluctuated. It has been between 800 million US dollars and 1 billion US dollars. And we export roughly in the range of about 100 to 200 million US dollars worth of goods to Singapore. But so what are the products that we export? We export mainly mineral fuels and oils, textiles, tea, precious and semi-precious stones, seafood, ships and boats. Boating vessels sector has really contributed significantly in 2017 and 2018. And this sector could be considered one of the high value sectors for the Singapore market. Apart from that, the other sectors that have a lot of potential is the apparel, alcoholic beverages, pneumatic and retreated rubber tires, and tubes. These are going to be growth these were growth sectors, in fact, in 2019. So seafood, Ceylon tea, gems, processed food, coconut milk, food ingredients such as spices and essential oils, activated carbon are products that we consider as potential for the future. And in the services sector, as I said before, IT and IT-enabled services, we believe, is an area that we can work very successfully on. So Singapore and Sri Lanka have also concluded a free trade agreement. You may have read about it. You may have heard about the debates that were there. But I am strongly of the view that this is a free trade agreement that we need to really make full use of. Why do I say this? Because now this is the only free trade agreement that we have negotiated, which has the services chapter and the investment chapter. If you look at the free trade agreements that Singapore has signed, what has tended to happen is that once the free trade agreement is signed by Singapore, the investments from Singapore tend to follow the agreement. So that is the key thing that we need to look at, because trade in goods, definitely we will certainly need to do a lot more to improve on. But investments is something that really has potential. And in order for Singaporeans to have the confidence to continue to invest in Sri Lanka and to augment their investments in Sri Lanka, the free trade agreement is really quite an important instrument. For example, Singapore has an FTA with China. And Singapore, if you would be surprised to hear that Singapore is one of the largest investors in China. So with regard to investments, Singapore is the fifth largest investor in Sri Lanka, and last year they invested about 100 million US dollars worth of investments. During the period 2005 to 2009, about 786 million US dollars were invested in Sri Lanka. Around 100 Singaporean businesses work in and operate in Sri Lanka in manufacturing, in food processing, in infrastructure development, in real estate, etc. So already investments are there, but we need to, we certainly have potential to attract more investments from Singapore. Now, I'll talk a little bit about pandemic challenges and opportunities. What happened to Singapore really during the pandemic was there were two sectors that, there was one sector in particular that really impacted on them, which was food security. And the other aspect was the health security. What I mean by health security was supplies of masks, supplies that they found disruptions too. So in that sense, they approached Sri Lanka. We were also in discussions with them in the early stages to see whether they could obtain certain items from Sri Lanka, particularly in the food area and also in the health materials and health supplies area. So they came back to us saying they would like to cooperate on particularly the supply of masks. So so we were able to secure an export order for MAS with Temasek Foundation. This is the first occasion that Temasek Foundation has sourced medical supplies or medical products from Sri Lanka. What happened to them was they had placed some orders with certain countries, but those countries not only failed to deliver, but also were withholding the delivery because they wanted to use the masks themselves. So they were very nervous. Singaporeans were very nervous and wanted, even when they approached Sri Lanka, they wanted government guarantees to say that the supply would not be disrupted. Supply of masks to Singapore would not be disrupted. So those guarantees were given by us. And we worked together with MAS Holdings and Temasek Foundation to ensure that this particular order went through. It was to produce 10 million masks in Sri Lanka for Singapore, and the technology was patented Swiss technology masks. These masks can be used for 30 weeks. They are washable, and the Singaporeans were extremely happy with the quality of the product that MAS provided. So this is an entry point. the fact that they were happy, and the fact that MAS in fact improved on the product. And the feedback that I got from Temasek Foundation officials was they were extremely happy, because they said the MAS group really came forward. They improved the product. So this is a good reflection of how cooperation between two countries can really overcome the challenges of supply chain disruptions, because we were able to adapt our product and provide masks to Singapore. And because of the cooperation and the goodwill that exists between the two countries, the supply was ensured. So that's one outcome of the work that we did during the pandemic. The worth of the exporter is estimated to be over 130 million US dollars. Temasek Foundation donated 1 million of those masks back to Sri Lanka for frontline healthcare workers, for education sector workers, and also for law enforcement officials. And those were formally handed over to me by the Senior Minister of State for Foreign Affairs of Singapore, and in Sri Lanka, Minister for Regional Cooperation of the Foreign Ministry accepted it on behalf of Sri Lanka. So those 1 million face masks really came in handy, particularly because of the new outbreak, the new clusters that are emerging in Sri Lanka at the moment. So next, I would, apart from this particular export, the supply chain success story, we have also done several other things, particularly focused on introducing food products and also different other types of products to the Singapore market. We are just setting the stage at the moment. We had a webinar in July to mark the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries on digitalization and agribusiness, because the focus of Sri Lanka, particularly His Excellency the President, wanted to focus on agribusiness and digitalization. So we focused on digitalization and agribusiness, and about 90 Singaporean companies participated in this webinar. We also launched e-commerce platform. Two of our entrepreneurs, they launched a e-commerce platform to bring in Sri Lankan products. What we found, the market in Singapore, it's very difficult to source Sri Lankan products, Sri Lankan biscuits, spices, Ceylon cinnamon, Ceylon tea. Ceylon tea we do have to a certain extent, but again, we don't have a variety. So introducing several products from the range of Manchi biscuits or Maliban, then different types of spices, organic coconut oil, treacle, etc. So we also introduced Sri Lankan kids toys and stationery sector to Q10 e-commerce platform, and we held a virtual B2B. Apart from which, we are also hoping to cooperate in the health and wellness sector. What really came out during the pandemic was that health and wellness is going to be an important aspect, and also an important economic product. So to try to convince Singaporean businesses to use Sri Lankan ingredients in the health and wellness sector is something that we are working on. The next couple of days, 16 Sri Lankan companies will be participating in Print Pack and Sign virtual exhibition. This is the first time that we are participating particularly in the print sector, because the EDB reached out to us and said that they would like to see whether the print and packing segment can be augmented and relationships can be built. So this is a result of that particular exercise. Apart from which, we have continued to meet chambers of commerce. There are several ethnic chambers of commerce, the Singapore Indian Chamber of Commerce, the Singapore Chinese Chamber of Commerce, and also the Singapore Business Federation. And we have continued to meet these people to talk to them about possible business opportunities in consultation with the Export Development Board and the Board of Investment. So these are some of the steps that missions take to augment business between the two countries and investment between the two countries. The toughest is, of course, tourism. But well, we in August last year, the travel advisory was lifted following a lot of lobbying done by the mission, by the Sri Lanka High Commission. We met a lot of people, spoke to them about opening it up, and the travel advisory was revised favorably. But following that, of course, the coronavirus is another issue which we really need to deal with. So we are, together with Sri Lanka Tourism, promoting the idea of looking at Sri Lanka's wildlife in the comfort of your home, to keep everybody interested in Sri Lanka, because much of even though Sri Lanka is close to Singapore, a lot of people don't really know much about what kind of things are available in Sri Lanka. Particularly on the wildlife side, there's a lot of surprise when we say there's whale watching, and that there's leopards in Sri Lanka. So certainly we need to do a lot more work on the tourism side. And we are also hoping to have a festival, hopefully in January, tying up with the hawker food culture in Singapore, and trying to introduce Sri Lankan alcoholic beverages like lion beer and also Sri Lankan food to the Singapore market. So these are just some of the efforts that we have taken. We've done much more, but it's not possible to really go into details about every little thing that we do. But just to give you an idea about the kind of work that diplomatic missions undertake, despite the challenges that the pandemic has brought along. So let me wish all of you a wonderful master's program. I'm sure APIT will deliver some important insights as you learn. And let me leave you with the thought that keep learning, keep upskilling, and keep moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It was a fantastic presentation that you made. And we have a few questions that we could ask you. Is that okay, Your Excellency?
Sure, Dr. Han.
So the first question, I'm getting from different people is that they're asking you, what made you join the foreign service?
Well, actually, I came upon it by accident, I would say. So I think the career chose me rather than I chose the career, mainly because my father, who was in the administrative service, um, wanted me to do something of usefulness with my life. Because as he put it, I was at the time management trainee at ABN AMRO Bank, a Dutch bank, earning quite a lot of money and being very happy with myself. But that was my first job. But my father told me, what are you doing signing checks and wasting your life away? Do something useful. Sit the foreign service exam. So I sat the exam, kicking and screaming as it would be. but I found it to be an exceptional opportunity, particularly because at the time that I joined, the Minister of Foreign Affairs was Minister Lakshman Kaviragam. So I think for me, that was the best thing that could have happened, because he knew each of us by name even at entry point. He molded us. He took an interest in us. He took us to all the bilateral negotiations. I was on the bilateral negotiating teams for Indo-Lanka agreements. So gave us a lot of exposure. And those opportunities, I think, came with a minister who had a vision of what Sri Lanka could become. So certainly, I didn't choose the career, I have to say that.
Okay. Your Excellency, like I was telling you, uh, you actually earmarked to take over the UK High Commissioner's position, but then you opted for taking the Singapore or a Southeast Asian market.
Yeah.
Any particular reason for that?
Actually, Dr. Rohanta, the reason, the offer came to me in the middle of this particular posting. So I had already assumed duties as High Commissioner to Singapore. And in the middle of that, I was asked whether I would then shift to London to take over there. But I felt that it was important to at least first to complete your tenure in the place of your accreditation. And also because I personally believe that there's much more that Sri Lanka can achieve with East Asian economies. And we really have to put people who really want to achieve something in these places. And I feel that East Asia, I mean, the economic balance of power has shifted from the west to the east. So this is where really it's the rise of Asia now. So we should ideally be in Asia and be strongly in Asia. I strongly believe that. So I think I wanted to remain here and to complete my tenure.
So in terms of the FTA, it's actually it's fantastic. Everybody would love to go in to serve the Western countries in this kind of job. But for you to take over the Eastern, it just tells you that the focus you have. Do you think that the FTA can give us about a 5 billion, given that you have the investment, service arm with the merchandise? Do you feel that is possible, Your Excellency?
Yes, it's possible. But of course, as you know, we need to sort certain things out. But that can be done very simply because there are certain issues that were raised on the Singapore-Sri Lanka FTA. But there are, within the agreement itself, provision for the two countries to discuss those matters and arrive at some agreement. So first and foremost, I think we need to sort those issues out. But even with those issues, I can tell you, even now, there is a significant interest in investments in Sri Lanka from Singapore. But all those things will depend on the decisions that Sri Lanka makes on what we want into the country, because these particular investments that are being offered are very, very interesting and very important investments. But again, we also have to be ready from our side to really go forward. What I feel is that we need to be a little bit more focused on the areas in which we require investment and then really reach out to the Singapore side. We've done that already to a certain extent, particularly because His Excellency the President is also very keen to attract Singaporean investments in particular areas into Sri Lanka.
Do you feel that there is a will from both parties?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because if you look at the Sri Lanka Indo FTA, Your Excellency, to be very honest, the will is not there.
Well, from where I sit, I see a lot of goodwill between the two countries, and I think there's also a lot of interest in actually doing business with each other. And there has been high-level discussions already held between the two sides since President Gotabaya Rajapaksa came into power, and I think that bodes very well for the two countries. And whatever issues there may be, I think both countries have a long history of good relations, and I'm sure that we can sort out those issues and go forward.
So, Your Excellency, if you have to advise Sashikala, who is young, who is 20 years old, the young Sashikala, what is the advice you're going to give her?
Okay, first I would say get married before you join the foreign ministry. But just jokes apart. But jokes apart, I think I would say to try to do your masters a little bit quicker than I did, because I stayed away from studies for about 20 years before I actually completed my masters. I tried very hard to complete a master's, but work came in the way. So I would give that piece of advice to 20-year-old Sashikala. And I would also tell her not to take disappointments too much to heart, and not to be overly sensitive about failures.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Any questions from the House? You can write on the chat. Do you, Chairman, being the chairman for 3 consecutive terms at the Export Development Board, I had only just 1 term, but you had 3 terms. Any questions, sir?
No, in fact, you covered very well because this, the last question was more attractive question that what advice that you can give as the 20 years Sashikala. But I think you can expand a little bit of now all 20 years. Lot of Shashikalas are on board with us at the moment in terms of academic and how the balancing of your personal life and all these things in terms of the connectivity. If you can add some more elaborative advice, madam.
Okay. So I think family is important, and whatever that family may be, I think it's very important to prioritize time for your family, regardless of whatever job you do, no matter whatever post you hold. The people who are around you are the only ones who are going to be with you when it matters. So I would say family first, and career. Yes, education, upskilling is extremely important within your sector. Whatever it may be, maybe it's a master's, maybe it's a postgraduate diploma. Try to learn something new. But to those people who are listening in, I would also say that try to do something different to your own stream of work. Because what I find in Sri Lanka, what Sri Lankan youth, I think to a certain extent are a little bit backward on, because we tend to go through like a very rigorous examination scheme and a rigorous study, this thing, the innovation and entrepreneurial skills. I think we really need to work on bringing out more entrepreneurs and innovators in the country. And for that, both government and people themselves have to be able to take a little bit of risk. We tend to be a country who are a little bit risk averse, I think. So to be able to actually come out with your own business models, to try to get funding and to launch products, to be a little bit more creative in what you do, I think is important, particularly for people who, I mean, I myself sometimes feel I'm stuck in a particular field, you know, and I always ask myself, okay, why is it that I can't shift? So I think you have to keep asking yourself that question and trying to see whether you can divert to a certain extent. What I do outside my work area is also I try to do a little bit of blogging, a little bit of creative poetry writing, something to keep you away from not only your workplace, but also to keep your creativeness alive.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We sincerely thank you for taking some valuable time. I know you did a lot of preparation in the last 2 days, and I'm sincerely appreciative for giving us the opportunity and for all the youngsters to hear you. And we like to wish you all the very best in your career, Your Excellency, and hopefully in the near future it will be great if when you come down to Sri Lanka, if you could have a face-to-face, maybe a half an hour to see the Sashikala in terms of taking Sri Lanka to a 5 billion export bilateral trade between Sri Lanka and Singapore, because you have the correct support, and we wish you all the very best, Your Excellency.
Thank you
I'd
very
like to thank you very much again, and thank you. I just like to thank Rajita for the IT support that was given. Thank you, Rajita, and Kaushali for shouldering all this responsibility. And within actually 2 days, we put this whole thing together. And thank you very much, Kaushali, and then of course Shami, Vatsala, and Lankani, who did all the creatives and put everything together so that we present this to you in a very holistic manner. I mean, there's a whole army of people behind with regard to the academic, with regard to the coordinators, with regard to the communicators who support all these 60 students who have joined the master's program. And and we are very, as I said in the out at the outset, uh, we are here to understand the new things, new skills which are required, because as I told you, the pre-pandemic skill sets and the thinking that has to be there is very different to now. And Your Excellency also very clearly sure told us the new things which they are doing, which I think is so different to what a normal um, uh, uh, protocol officer would do in terms of driving bilateral kind of relationships between two large countries. So I like to hand over right now to Kaushali, and my sincere thanks, and I like to wish the best for the coordinators, Dr. Rajita, who runs the MBA, and Professor Priyanta out there from Canada, listening to us, and he's driving the MSc. And then we have Dr. Chaturu, who is doing a wonderful job on the law front. I mean, you're really championing that whole area to give a new thinking. So we are all here to support you all who have selected, and to bring some kind of a new thinking which Sri Lanka requires to support the works of Her Excellency, who is driving the country at a very high level. So, Kaushali, over to you, Kaushali. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rohanta, and amazing input. May I please send a sincere thanks to you, Your Excellency. It's amazing, and more than the subject's expertise, I think the whole family concept and then the whole importance of being holistic, that perspective being shared among our students is amazing, which I believe personally is quite needed at this particular time. And thank you so much again for sharing time with us and sharing knowledge with us.
Thank you very much.
Right?
Thanks,
All right, so we
Kaushali.
look forward to seeing you more and more if the time permits in the future, whenever we
Thank
have
you.
opportunities to join.
I would be happy to do that. Thank you so much.
You're
So
welcome.
we will move
Right.
out now, Kaushali, and you take in charge to take it to the next section of the
Sure.
orientation. Thank
That's
you.
right.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much.
much, Dr. Rohanta. Right.